All right, guys, it's Sunday morning, 10:30. Just got my bike cleaned up from a nasty mountain bike race yesterday, so getting back to the car. Shop supervisor is not impressed. But the goal for today is to have this engine out of the car, hopefully before lunchtime. Like I said, it's 10:30 right now. I'm not going to show all the steps and everything for that, but I have the wiring harness mostly disconnected. There's a couple on the back side that I just can't get my hand between the firewall and the back of the engine to get, like a crank position sensor, coolant temp sensor I think is down there, and then like one or two of the cam sensors that are on the back of the engine. But I have most everything out. I got the shifter handle out of the way. I got the trans cross member bolts loose. I'm gonna try to do it without taking the radiator out of the car. Just leave that in there. Coolant's all drained. Everything's disconnected from the radiator. Intake hose is off. So I do have to undo the Hydro Boost lines, and I'm hoping that I can just take this reservoir and kind of pop it up out of the way enough to get it out without undoing and having to redo that fluid. Yeah, then I'm gonna pop off. I just loosen up the two bolts on each side for the sway bar. I'm just gonna leave that connected to the control arms. Gonna pop the wheels off, pop the struts off, so it's just a control arm sitting there alone. And then I'm just going to use the good old engine hoist and tie off around these frame horns up here and lift the front end of the car up. So that's the plan of attack. We'll see how this goes. I'm debating if I'll leave the camera on or if I'll just do my work and then show you the aftermath. Got the engine back out of the car. I wanted to check, God, now I forgot the word for it. What was the word for it, Owen? But I wanted to check and make sure that the engine wasn't offset, or the engine wasn't offset from the transmission. So I used this plate here and I measured, like, with the dial indicator laying out here, and it seemed to be there was a little bit of offset, so, or it kind of tipped one way, but it was weird. It was like a high spot down here, then kind of a low through here, and then it like all of a sudden like jumped up high right up here. So I'm wondering if it's just kind of gunked up, so I just used some Scotch-Brite and I pulled the plate off and kind of rubbed around on here and smoothed it out. Yeah, maybe I should almost do that with this surface too. So yeah, I'll just clean all that up with Scotch-Brite, make sure there's no gunk on it. So I'm thinking that's what I'll do, is I'll just clean up all the mating surfaces of the engine with that Scotch-Brite. I'm not pulling the flywheel off again, but once I have the bell housing off again, I'll just make sure I get that side of the bell housing. I already did that side of the transmission. I'll get the back side of the bell housing, both sides of it, and try to get the back side of the block too. And hopefully that'll just get everything nice and true and squared up again. And then I ran the dial indicator on here, and it said for this offset, or if you had to do offset bushings, there was like 7 thousandths, 14 and 21 thousandths. But we spun this thing around a couple of times and it was off by about 3 thousandths. So, and I think the tolerance for that was about 5. So I know it was a lot of work to get to this point just to check this, but after the fact I'm kind of glad I did, just so that I know I'm not doing any harm to that transmission or anything. But everything looked good. You can tell there's a little bit of chatter with that clutch, but maybe that's just with getting it all seated in and everything. So, but I'm going to start getting this thing back together and getting it back in the car and making sure this thing's good to go for Motor City Fox Fest. This is as far as I got yesterday. I got the transmission and everything back in, the clutch back in, and got started on this header until I got to a bolt that was stubborn for getting started threading in. Yeah, we'll see how far we get. It's Monday night, a little bit late already, so yeah, so I'll get moving on this again and see how far I get tonight. I don't know if I'll start cramming it back under the car or not, but we'll get as close as we can and get this back in the car soon. It's the Wednesday before the 4th of July. Back out in the garage again, me and the shop dog here. I got all the headers bolted on. I didn't get that all done on Sunday. I got one started, got both of them on in the last night or so here. But I got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday off of work. So what I want to do is get this engine back in the car, get it running as soon as I can. Get the front end back on the car. And I really want to get at least the main part of the dash back in the car. And get the fender flares, my makeshift fender flares on, and I just bought like some Gorilla tape for the back because I don't think I'm gonna make the time and hack those rear fenders up exactly. I'm not exactly sure how I want to do it yet, so I don't want to start doing something that I can't reverse. So I got some all-weather Gorilla tape, so I'm going to use that to try to seal up those rear fenders as much as I can and get my little plastic fender flares on. But mainly I want to this weekend get this car ready so that it's ready to roll and drive a little bit at Motor City Fox Fest. I thought I'd try to get the dash back in enough so that I at least have some heater controls so I can run the vent and defrost if I need to. Even though it's not going to have AC or anything hooked up, of course. No heat, no AC, no nothing, just kind of some bare bones stuff just so that I can drive this car. Maybe throw the door panels back in it too, just so it looks a little bit finished in the car. Yeah, but I should write my list up on my little whiteboard there. And yeah, so I'm going to get rolling this. I did when I think I showed the steering column was in the way with the steering shaft that goes between the steering column and the rack. So it ended up pulling that steering column out a little bit, so I did get that kind of popped back in place. So I got to bolt the steering column back up in the car. Yeah, quite a bit to do, but I think it should go pretty quickly now that I kind of have the the gist of it. Like with pulling it out of the car, I kind of learned the steps I need to do to get it in and out. So I'm gonna get rolling with that, and hopefully I'll be I don't know about driving this car today, but hopefully I'll be close to starting this engine again with it back in the car. All right, making progress on my own here. This thing slides around kind of hard. My little cheap, I think I got them from Northern Tool, the little furniture dollies that I have the engine and tran sit on. So I just got my little pry bar to kind of knock the wheels around and got it rolled under here. Started lowering the engine. I started lowering the car onto the engine. And I thought, oh, maybe I'll get some of these wires on before there's no space to get my hand to the back side of the heads and down to the crank position sensor and the coolant temp sensor that are back pretty much down by the bell housing there. And even the rear cam sensors here are a little bit tricky to get to once the engine's in there and you have no space for big hands. So got to do my ground strap up too. I do have the transmissions sitting under there, so I got a couple of the wires, vehicle speed sensor, reverse lockout, and I think there's something else there too, but I got all that stuff at least plugged in. I'm going to start plugging this stuff in on the engine, at least the stuff that's on the back side of the heads and the back side of the engine back up there by the transmission. At least get that stuff. Maybe I can get maybe I'll plug everything else in once the engine's up in place or the car is down in place, however you want to look at that. Okay, got all the wires plugged in. I'm kind of concerned about the one on the intake cam. I think it's the intake cam. Yeah, the intake cam on bank 2 there. It didn't want to click and snap, but you can tell it's fully seated. So we'll roll with that. So I got all the wiring hooked up there. I'm not hooking up the coil injectors yet just because they're big bundles of wires. Got a light back here so I can kind of watch it as I continue to set the car down on the engine. And we'll work on getting this all set and put back together. You can kind of see all my pretty brake lines and stuff over there and how I routed them through that inner fender, or through the strut tower I should say. But yeah, getting closer. I did get the engine into the car before lunchtime. And now I'm just kind of working on piecing things back together. So I got my list up there on the whiteboard. So just getting the brakes, the suspension installed, sway bars bolted back up. I think I got most of the stuff back together on the front end. Probably finish up the engine wiring, try to clean that up a little bit, hook up my power steering again, get some fluid dumped in there, get hoses back installed again, and get the coolant topped off. Got to get the car jacked up again. Just worked easier to get it all up on jack stands to get the drive shaft in and the exhaust back underneath. Yeah, and go from there. But I've been out here, it's Thursday morning, getting my days mixed up. So the day before the 4th of July, didn't get everything wrapped up yesterday. It was just too hot. And I was out here at like 9 or 10 in the morning, whatever it was, until I think I was out here until just a little bit before 6 o'clock. And then my wife and I just decided to take some time and relax and went out and grabbed a pizza and a beer and that sort of thing. So I'm back out here today. Didn't have a whole lot to finish up. I realized I didn't have the positive side of the alternator hooked up, so I got that done. I got the one bar that goes across at the rear of the K member, so kind of at the rear of the engine. Got the shifter installed. I do want to put that shift knob on there yet. But I might find the old boot that went over the shifter on the floor there and see if I can make that work. But I think I got everything hooked up, all the wiring's hooked up. Went and did a nut and bolt check underneath. Everything looked good. Got the coolant topped off, got power steering fluid in there, so I thought I'd fire up and kind of cycle the power steering and get that topped off. But I think it's at a point where it's ready to fire right now. Then I thought too, before I do get it down off the jack stands, I might pop this other fender and the bumper cover back on. And I think I actually will put in the other headlight, but I think it should be okay. I think I got everything hooked up that I need to hook up. But I'm gonna fire it up before I do throw the fender and the bumper cover back on. All right, first fire of the car after indexing the transmission. Well, didn't have to index it, I checked it, made sure it was all good to go. Here we go, first fire. All right, I thought I'd show this. So as you know, I had a gap here between this inner fender and the body, and I used some Gorilla all-weather tape. So as you know, or may recall, I had slit the fender in a bunch of spots here, so I ran tape up on the inside of the fender all the way around, past where the slits are in the sheet metal, and then around the outside here, and then filled in up to the body. So it actually is kind of firm. At least it's kind of holding everything together. But I'm still debating. I might cut these cheap little fender flares on and just put them on here to kind of cover things up and kind of make it look a little bit less hokey. But we'll see. We'll see how it looks when I have it on the ground. Especially with the front fenders, they're just all hogged out. I still got to get it on here. But yeah, so that's kind of how it's looking right now. All right, getting this car more and more together. Got it back on the ground. Just kind of roll it back and forth on the ground. I want to do a quick alignment, and I'll show you guys later how I'm doing it. But I saw this. I should find a link to it. But I thought it was really good. The Quick Trick alignment tool. I think once you get like all the little turntables and all the fancy stuff, you're up over $1,000. So I thought, you know what, I'll give this a shot. Just some PVC pipes, so 2 pieces of that. Then I got it cut so it's about 3 inches wider than the car on each side. But I'll show that here in a minute. But basically, to check my my camber, I just made myself a nice little straight edge, and I made sure this was, well, relatively straight. Just a little 1x2, and I cut it so that it's even with, just even inside the lip of the wheel there. And I bought this handy dandy little digital angle gauge. Yeah, Barney's not liking the heat. It's like 92 degrees, something like that over today, so we're sweating. But this was like 30 bucks off of Amazon. So I can't do this with one hand, but basically just held this straight edge up against the wheel, put that angle finder on it. So this one's about 2 point, and well, I zeroed it out by just placing that on the floor and zeroing out the gauge just to kind of get an idea, because I think my floor does slope a little bit towards the drain there. But this wheel was about 2.2 degrees cambered in. So what's that on positive camber when it's cambered in?
Negative.
Negative. And this side was about 1.7. So I think it's good enough to at least drive around on. That back wheel there was 0 degrees, about spot on according to all my quick little tool here. And this one was about 0.5 degrees cambered in. So I think it's good enough to run with in that regard at Motor City Fox Fest. Next, I'm going to check the toe. So that's what I got, the PVC pipe and the jack stand set up here. So I got the jack stand set up with the PVC pipe on it so that it's about even with the center of the wheel. And then I'm going to get it centered up on the car. And I'm going to start checking my toe on all these guys. I'm hoping the rear toe is pretty decent. but I know when I drove it, it seemed like my steering wheel was off just a little bit to go straight down the road. So I think each of these guys are kind of, this side's kind of towed out right now. This side's kind of towed in a little bit, so I'll probably have to make some adjustments there. But once I get things set up and kind of checked, I'll come back again. All right, so I went around. So what I did here was I have PVC tube, but I got these slots cut in here. So I have about 3 inches of space between the wheel and the string on each side. I figured that was pretty good. And they're perfectly the same distance. I cut both those slots at the same time in a little jig that I had. So I cut these so they're even with each other, flipped the tube around, made sure these slots were still even with each other, and cut the slots on this side. So as far as tolerances go, I think I'm pretty good in that regard. So now I got set up, I measured so that it's even on the front and on the back, and I just measured off of the center of the hubcap on each side, thinking that's in pretty good shape there. So I just bought some of the chalk line from the local Menards. I think those were like $6, and then I bought another plumb bob. I had one already, so it's got tension on the string here, but it's pretty easy to just kind of hold the ruler up underneath the string and get some measurements there. So I'm gonna go around and check my toe, front and rear. But yeah, I think, again, like I said, I got the steering wheel set pretty straight in there right now. But we'll go around and we'll do some measurements here and get this all adjusted. I'll come back at you when I'm done here, or have some measurements, and just to document it and let you guys know. Barney, the shop dog, is still in his spot. He's not moving. He says the heck with it. You're crazy to move around. Oh, he set up. All right, so just as I suspected, or what I had hoped, I think my rear is pretty good. It was 101.5 for both measurements on the passenger side, 101.5 on the rear, and then 100.5 on the front of this rim on the passenger, the right rear. So it's just slightly towed out on this side and right at 0 on the other side, according to my measurements here. Just as I suspected on the front, it's about 10 millimeters difference towed in here with the steering wheel straight. And what do we got here? About 6.5 towed out on that side. So I'm gonna do a little work here and try to get that tire kicked in on the driver's side, get this one kicked out, well, kicked out more than what it is, and then go from there. So what I'm going to try to do is just undo my string here. It's just kind of using weight in the slots that I had cut in this PVC pipe. And so I'll just undo that, hopefully not bump this too much as I try to get under the front of this car and turn on the tie rods there. And yeah, do some measurement there, or tweaking there, I should say, and then come back and remeasure. All right, so I did put a jack under the control arm and jacked it up just enough to get this wheel off the ground, just barely. And I use my little machinist rule and just hold it against the rim and under the string, take my measurements. I'm finally sitting at 98.5. millimeters front and rear on this guy. So that's about as good as it's gonna get there. I'm debating if I want to do anything with that back wheel that's sitting 1 millimeter toe out, but gosh, I just can't see going through the effort for that 1 millimeter just to drive the car around a little bit. But I think I got everything. I'm gonna double check my measurements, set this back on the ground, make sure nothing really changes, tighten down my jam nuts for the tie rods, and then we're gonna call the alignment done. I'm gonna call this a success and that it's done once I put this back down on the ground and double check everything. All right, I did jack up the back end of this a little bit and climbed under there and messed around with the tie rod for this one. So I basically have all 4 wheels set at 0 toe, at least the best that I can with my setup here, using my rulers, using the string. So I'm gonna jack it up once more, tighten up my jam nuts for the tie rod links here, and it's gonna be good.